Sunday.
You start?
Yep, we're rolling.
This is an interview with Irving Rosenberg at the Division of Military Naval Affairs Headquarters, Latham, New York, January 29th, 2003, 3:20 p.m. The interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you tell me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Irving Rosenberg, November 5th, 1916. I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to military service?
I had about 2 years of high school, and then things were getting tough. I had to get out and earn some money, so I left school and tried to get a job, but it didn't work out too well, unfortunately, you know.
Okay, could you tell me where you were and your reaction when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I remember it was a Sunday morning. We were reading the Sunday papers, and we had the radio on, and suddenly it was interrupted. The program was interrupted, and they said, Pearl Harbor has been bombed. And everybody just stopped. We sort of froze, you know, and then things started to happen.
Do you remember having any kind of reaction to this at all, this news, what your reaction was?
Well, I figured I would be going into the Army. They would draft me, you know, and they kept holding it off and holding it off. I figured I'd try to get a job, but they wouldn't take you unless you had 4F, which means you're not going in. So I said, look, either take me or give me 4F. I can't do anything. I'm in limbo. So one day I get a letter, greetings. Your neighbors have chosen you, you know.
So you were drafted?
I was drafted. That was in October.
All right. Where did you go for your basic training?
Well, let me put it this way.
Okay.
On November 9th, I was called, they said, show up November 9th at Grand Central Station. Grand Central Station was a big building that used to hold exhibits for cars, this, that, and everything else. And it was converted by the Army into a processing center. So I took the subway from Brooklyn. They examined me and took tests and all that. Then they gave us car fare, subway fare, and railroad fare. We went to Yaphank, Long Island, Camp Upton, a World War I processing center. And we went there. And a couple of days later, they gave us railroad fare. They didn't tell us where we were going. They just gave you the papers. They give you a big manila envelope. Here you are. And whoever was in my outfit, we got together, went on a train, and Pennsylvania Station, and headed south. And every now and then we'd be shunted aside to let the war material go by. Long freight cars and flat-top cars with tanks and all with war material. And we wound up in Columbus, Georgia. I said, what's at Columbus, Georgia? It was the infantry school. And we said, ooh. And they still didn't tell us what kind of an outfit we were in. And we pulled in to Columbus that night. There were trucks waiting for us. We got in the trucks, the 6x6s, and we drove to Fort Benning. And we were assigned to a couple of barracks, and in the morning we got up and they said, you are now in, well, wait a minute, wait, I take that back. They still didn't tell us for about a week. We didn't know, what are we in? Are we in the infantry or what? It was also the paratroop school. And finally they told us, well, you're in the medics. You're on a hospital train. The 24th Hospital Train. That's the name of your outfit.
Had you had any kind of medical training at all?
Nope. In fact, as far as I could remember, none of us had medical training. And we didn't get a train till, I think, July. They shipped us to Camp Forest, Tennessee, and that's where we got our train. And we didn't meet the nurses until we were in Camp Forest, Tennessee. We didn't meet any of the medical staff until we were in Tennessee. And when we were there, we met the doctors and the nurses, and we still didn't get our train. So what we did was, you know, when you mentioned basic training, we didn't have basic training the way the infantry did.
Okay,
You know.
I was wondering if you had some kind of specific.
No. What we did, lay down on our bellies. They said, keep your head down. This is live ammo. Keep your head down. You could hear the pop, pop, pop as the bullets went overhead, you know. And we crawled under the barbed wire, and that was it. And we went on a couple of hikes. We didn't go too far. I think the Boy Scouts did better than we did, you know, because, look, we were a medical outfit. And I have to say, I never had a gun. Never had a gun in the Army. Never shot a gun. The combat medics, I think, had a sidearm, but we never did. We were on a train. And what we did, once we were sort of organized, we met all the nurses and the doctors. The major was the head of it, and the doctors were captains and lieutenants. And we finally got a train, big train. We received the British train when we wound up in England. But while we were in the States, what we did was we drove, the train rode as far as we could to where they were holding maneuvers. And when we got there, the ambulances were waiting with soldiers who were wounded on maneuvers, or if they were sick, or if they were in accidents. They were put in ambulances, driven to the railroad station. They were taken aboard, and we went to, let's see, I think it was Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. From there, ambulances came and took them to big hospitals, Army hospitals throughout the Atlanta area.
You had no specific medical training then?
No.
What were your duties?
Okay. I was in the ambulatory car. And I had another man working with me. What we did was we gave them medication if they needed it, and my partner gave them shots if they needed it, and we fed them. That was it. Whereas in the other cars, which were box cars...
Could you just explain what the other cars were?
Yeah.
Please?
Yeah. They were box cars fitted with racks. So when they put the litters on it, the stretchers on it, with the wounded, that's where they stayed, 1, 2. The train was composed of a baggage car at the tail end, where we stored our 2 barracks bags. In the front was a kitchen car, and they used the ambulatory car for people to sit down and eat because they had tables in it. And there was a pharmacy car, which was very useful. And then a kitchen car made the meal, and it was dispensed throughout the train. And you could go right through the train, and there were other men who took care of the badly wounded ones. And this is what we did for a couple of months. And then one day, the first sergeant says, okay, pack everything, get rid of your bedding, put on your fatigues. We're pulling out tomorrow morning. You're going to sleep on bare cots, which is what we did, or we tried to sleep. And let's see, 3 o'clock in the morning, we're awakened. Okay, the trucks are waiting. We got on the trucks, they took us to the railroad station, and 8 o'clock in the morning, the train finally came. From 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And we headed east, north and east, northeast. And we wound up at Camp Kilman, New Jersey. This was the first stage of going over. We, in the morning, we were all driven to a big hotel. I forget what town it was, right next to the Hudson River. Big hotel. The men went first, and then the nurses went after them. Everybody stripped bare, put a life jacket on, and jumped into the pool. In the event that something happened while at sea, you had to be familiar with what you had to do. So we did that. Okay, we dried up, got dressed. They took us over to a ferry. We went across the Hudson, and there the Mauritania was waiting for us. An old ocean liner, but a good one. And the pier was all full of military, all full, thousands of soldiers. And they had a man with the list as we approached the gangplank with our barracks bags, you know. Later on, they had duffel bags. And he read off the names. Okay, as we went up, the Red Cross handed us a cup of coffee and a donut. We went on board. And we were assigned a place to sleep, and that was it. And in the morning, we pulled out slowly, went down the Hudson River, and slowly pulled into the bay, into the Atlantic Ocean. And as we pulled out, we passed Coney Island, where they had a parachute tower. And I was on that parachute tower the year before, living in Brooklyn, you know. Well, as you went by, you stood at the rail staring at the receding landscape, you know, and you said, am I going to come back? It's an odd feeling. You don't know what's going to happen, you know. So we zigzagged across the ocean.
Were you in a convoy? Or?
No, we went alone,
solo
yes.
ship?
The convoys, oh, they got it, but good. We went alone, zigzagging across the ocean. They had a cannon on the aft deck, and they shot it once, and that was it. And finally, we see land in the distance, England. And as we were looking, 2 Spitfires came down to circle the ocean to see that there were no subs lurking around, you know. Beautiful sight, you know. And by the time we reached land, it was dark. No lights. No lights. Where are we? Liverpool, England. And as we're getting off the ship, we hear air raid, you know. And we looked up. You couldn't see anything, but you could hear the planes chasing the German. You could hear the rat-tat-tat of machine guns, you know. We got on the train and went to the town of Cheltenham, pronounced Cheltenham. And there we were at a brand new station hospital, which was built expecting the wounded to.
When did you arrive?
We arrived there in September. September, yeah, September of 43. And we arrived there in September of 43. And we did our duties there until we got a train. And when we got the train, we went all over England and into Scotland one time and into Wales one time. We went to where they were holding maneuvers, and the guys were brought on, and we went to the seaport, or they were taken to hospitals. One time we took them to Scotland, to the seaport in Scotland. I don't know, I forget why, I don't know whether it was Edinburgh or what, but it was in Scotland where the wounded and sick were put on board ships and shipped home.
Now, you said, well, of course, in England, it'd be an English train. Well, how different was it to an American hospital train?
It seemed a little smaller. Did you ever see the British movies with the trains?
Yes.
That's it, you know, that's it. And each of us had staterooms. And the layout of our train was basically the same as the American train, you know. And it was what should I say, quaint. You know, it was a nice little train. And we had British engineers. And I think they hooked up an American engine to it, if I'm not mistaken, you know. It had a coal car and all. And we got passes and we went to town and all that. And we traveled over England.
How did you get along with the English population?
Well,
How do you think you were accepted?
There were a lot of guys there. Oof. England was one big base. They had depots there covered with huge tarpaulins, all full of material. And a lot of the roads are narrow there, and when they held maneuvers with tanks, the tanks widened them, you know. They had no other choice, you know. And, well, we got along with the British. You know, I did anyway, you know. And we saw sights. I met my brother there.
Yeah.
My brother went to North Africa first, and when they chased Rommel out, his outfit was sent to England. I found out that he was just a bus ride away from where I was based. And he was in the 9th Air Force on the ground. He was an artist, among other things, you know, but he was on the ground personnel. And when I met him, it was nice meeting him, let me tell you. And he showed me around the base, and he says, here's where I work, you know, when I'm off duty. And we went into his they allocated a little bit of space for him so we could make portraits of the fighter pilots.
Oh.
And it so happened the time I was there, I was watching him work, you know, and suddenly some soldier jumps up and yells, "Ted, hut!" We all jumped up, and in comes General Quesada. At ease, he says. He goes over to my brother, he says, "Hey, did you finish my portrait yet?" And I wish I had it. I never saw it, you know. And he says, "Not yet, but you'll get it, sir, you'll get it." Anyway, we got passes. We went through London, we went to Salisbury, and all the other small towns. And I think England was a beautiful country. And then in I think it was September. Oh, no, I'm jumping ahead. Well, when we were busy taking the men to the hospitals, we kept working our way down south. And finally, we were on our tracks right next to the English Channel. And everybody had a feeling something is up. We didn't know what it was. And the night of November 5th came, and it was still dark, November 6th, 1944, when we started to hear airplanes going over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. We turned the radio on, and Eisenhower was speaking. This is it, D-Day. So we waited for 2 days before they because the poor guys were pinned down, and they were getting all the ships ready to bring them back, you know. And 2 days later, the ships came in, and at the pictures show in my story, we're loading them on board. And it was an awful sight to see, but hey, and we took them to different hospitals all over England. And as we were going, the fighting was going on and on and on. Finally, it reached a point where they liberated Paris, and shortly after they liberated and the infantry was driving the Germans back, we says, okay, we're going we're going to cross the Channel, and we're going to land in Cherbourg. Now, the whole train rolled on a ferry because they use that ferry for tourists during peacetime. You get on a train, you want to tour Europe, you get on a train will go on a ferry, dock at Cherbourg, and tour Europe, you know. So we did that, but when we got to Europe, oh boy, we were riding on brand new tracks, because as you see in the pictures, our bombers and fighters pulverized all the railroads to prevent the Germans from bringing back material, supporting their troops. And boy, you have to see the destruction. Really unbelievable.
Now, was the train marked in any way?
Oh, yeah.
That was a hospital train?
Oh, yeah.
It
had big
crosses?
red crosses on a white background on the front and back of each car and on the sides of each car. And it was highly visible. And we went along, and we were all dumbfounded seeing what had happened, you know. And we reached Paris, and that was our base for a while. We pulled into Saint Lazare station in the middle of Paris. And right next to it was a famous church called the Madeleine. And from there, we went out, made sure we didn't stray too far from the railroad station because we could be called up any minute. You got to go out to pick the wounded up. And we toured Paris. I found it a beautiful city. I found England and France beautiful. And when the call came, we pulled out. We went as far as we could. The ambulances were waiting. We put the wounded on, went back to Paris. And one night, we pulled out to go for the wounded. And the next morning, we pulled in. Now, when you do this constantly, you know what everything looks like. And as we pulled into the station, we see a lot of construction work. What happened here? When we pulled in, we found out that a half an hour after we pulled out, a German raider came in and bombed the tracks that we were standing on. So we were lucky. It killed a number of people, and well, that was it. Well, as the fighting went on, we went to Belgium, and Liège became our base. And from there, we went as far as we could, back to Liège, and the hospital, the ambulances took them to hospitals around in the Liège area. And then we went to Verviers, which was right near the German border. And we picked up the wounded there, went back to Liège, where the wounded were taken off, and back again we went. And one day, we didn't know this. This was at the end of the breakthrough. We were waiting for the wounded in Verviers, and shells started to fall around us, you know. Only later on did we find out that, boy, they had one heck of a time when the Germans broke through, you know. They got almost as far as Verviers, you know. And there was a time when we were laying in a railroad yard waiting to go for the wounded. On either side, one was a freight train loaded with high-octane gasoline, and another one was ammo, loaded. And one night, while we were waiting, the air raid sirens go off, and boy, we looked around. He says, if this guy hits us, goodbye, you know. But they chased him away, you know, they chased him away. And, well, after let's see, Verviers, we crossed, let's see, I think before we went to Belgium, we went down to Marseille once to pick up wounded from the, when they had some activity down there, you know, and came right back to Paris. Then when we went to Liège and all that, and we crossed new bridges because the other bridges that were there for a long time were down in the water from our bombers. And, well, we were in Verviers when, I think it was, when did Roosevelt die? April, yeah, in April.
Yes,
When word came over, President Roosevelt is dead, you know.
what was your reaction to that?
Well, I said, well, we knew, look, this was his, what was his third term?
Going to his fourth term.
Or his fourth term.
Yeah.
And we knew from the pictures we saw, he didn't look well at all. So it didn't surprise us, at least, you know. Anyway, I think it was May 8th when the Germans surrendered, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, May 7th or 8th, something like that, you know. So what they did with us, after we got all the wounded back, they hastily built a Bailey Bridge. You know what a Bailey Bridge is?
Yes.
Yeah. Across the Rhine. And we were the first train to cross the Rhine to go into Germany to get our own guys who were captured by the Germans. And boy, let me tell you, it was a sad sight to see. They were so starved. I mean, if a guy had his knees up and they put a sheet on it, his knees went right down. That's how weak he was, you know. And every few miles they'd stop at a station and get food for them, little by little, you know. And we did that till we got all our troops back home. And I remember seeing one camp in Germany. There were about 80,000 German prisoners, they said there. Huge place surrounded by the troops, you know. And I think, wait a minute, I think the fighting was still going on then, yeah. But once the war was over, so we went back to, I'm trying to put things in perspective to get our own guys, you know. And I found out later on, as we were going into Germany, there were trains coming back. These carried Belgians and Frenchmen. They were forced laborers under guns. They were forced to go on the trains, went into Germany to work in the war factories, and we found out that they sabotaged a lot of German material, shells and all that, you know, bullets and all that, you know. In fact, after I came home, I met some friends of mine, and he said he was on a half-track one day, and the German 88 zeroed in on him, and the shell went right through the side of the metal side of the half-track. The shell was sabotaged, so it didn't explode. Because if it wasn't sabotaged, he wouldn't have been here. So that's the extent of. Oh, wait a minute! I left one thing out. While we were still in England, the Germans sent the buzz bombs over. That was a small pilotless airplane with a 1-ton warhead in the nose. It had so much fuel, and we used to watch them come over, and when you heard them, you looked for the deepest hole you could get because you didn't know whether the fuel would be exhausted. And once it was exhausted, it nosed down and killed a lot of people, And, I don't know, they sent a few hundred over, and thanks to the British and American fighter pilots, they shot a lot of them down. But a lot of them got through too. So, let's see, so when we went to Germany, after we finished getting all our guys out, they took the train away from us, and they broke the outfit up. I don't know where anyone in my outfit went.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
Did you all stay together as a unit for the whole time in Europe?
Yeah, until
Until they broke you up?
Until they broke us up, and they said, you're going to the Pacific. And I remember one patient who was wounded, he says, I think they're trying to kill me. This guy was wounded twice, you know. And on one of the patients that was on a train when we were in France was a DiMaggio. And you talk about lookalikes. He was a cousin of Joe and Dominic DiMaggio.
Oh, really?
I said, do you like baseball? He says, nope, I don't like it. But he was a funny guy, and he had his outfit laughing all the time, and he got wounded. Now, what we did when we got the wounded, I should mention that, was we had papers with lines. When the wounded got on, they had tags on them. We looked at the tags, wrote down their names and the nature of the room, whether they were wounded by machine gun fire, rifle fire, shrapnel, concussion, or whatever. We wrote all that down, and we asked, where was they, you know, where are you from? We put down what city they were from, you know. And we had a lot of them, you know, and that went with the records on the train. Well, after the train was taken away, and said, you're going to the Pacific, they gave us collar shots and summer uniforms. And one day, somebody comes in, hey, the war's over. Great, we're going home. What happened? He said, they dropped a bomb. So they dropped what kind of bombs? Yeah. We didn't know it was the atom bomb. Nobody knew, you know. Then we heard that they dropped another one, you know. Okay, the war is over in Japan, and then came the process of sending everybody home. And we were sent, they made big camps, Camp Chesterfield, Camp Lucky Strike, Camp Old Goals, and all that. I think I went to Camp Chesterfield until your name came up. But while I was waiting, before I went to the camp, I was put to work in a big general hospital in Paris for about a week or two, you know. Then they sent us to the camp. Okay, on board the train, we went to Le Havre, took a ferry over. We got on the Queen Mary, about 10,000 of us on the Queen Mary. And boy, when we saw that Coney Island, it was wonderful. And then I went to Fort Dix, and I got out, I think it was December 3rd. And as I was walking out of the gate, they had two soldiers with a card table and a pile of forms. Hey, you want to join the reserves? You gotta be kidding! Some guys did. And they wound up in Korea, you know. And I walked out of the gate, a free man, took a ferry over to Manhattan, went to my brother's office, then took the subway home, and I went home to my mother and father and my sisters and brothers. And that was it. I consider myself very lucky. We were in danger, we were in air raids, you know. In fact, there was one time It was in Belgium. The Germans came over. The air raid siren sounded. We all ran into an underground shelter. Somebody dropped the helmet, and we all flattened down on the floor. You know, I mean, it's. But compared to what I went through, I was lucky, very lucky. You know, so I was fortunate in not seeing any action in that respect. If I had to do it, I would do it. You know, there's no question about it. I would have been a rifleman or whatever. You know. So.
Were you aware of the existence of concentration camps?
No, we weren't. We knew that something was happening. You know, before even while I was drafted, that what the Germans were doing wasn't too good. Not enough information came out. But then when we heard and we saw the pictures, oh boy. Well, I advise people to watch the History Channel with World War II, you know.
What was your reaction when you heard about the atomic bombs?
We didn't know what it was. You know, what does it do? When they told us it wiped out a whole city, we were amazed, you know. I mean, nobody knew, you know. But that was it. 2 bombs and the war was over.
Did you ever join a veterans organization?
I joined one when I came back home. I moved to Queens, and I was in there for a while, but that's it. It was, this one, I didn't join the American Legion, but I joined another one called the American Veterans Committee, the AVC. I don't know whether it's still in existence, but the AVC was an organization that was, they said, look, we had enough of war, you know.
Oh, okay.
And we went to, we went to places to put on shows and all that. We went to children's shelters to put on entertainment for them, you know, and all that. That's what we did. You know.
Did you ever stay in contact with anyone you served with?
Yeah, I did. I met a couple of guys in Brooklyn after the war. They were in different areas of Brooklyn. Then when I went to Queens, that's where I met my wife. And I did meet one of the nurses. We went over to her house. She was living out on Long Island, and we met her. Very nice person, you know. And shortly afterward, in 1960, she died, you know. And then
How many nurses were there on the train?
Oh, let's see. There must have been about 20. I think, I'm not too sure, but I think there were about 20 nurses, you know, after all they had shifts.
How many total personnel on the train?
Oh, boy. You know, I never counted them. There were a bunch of doctors. I did have a list of them, but I don't know where it was. It was quite a few. I think there were about 60 or 70 enlisted personnel.
Now, did you stay on the train?
We lived on the train, yeah. Now, while we were here, some of the men were sent to general hospitals for further training. They even went to the operating room to watch an operation, you know. And that was it. And so what I did was dispense pills and feed the wounded, you know, and sick.
Did you ever use the GI Bill?
Or the 5220 Club.
Or the 5220?
Yeah. And when we got out, they gave us the ruptured duck. You know what that is, don't you? The ruptured, what's this? A ruptured duck? I said, okay. Yeah.
So you made use of the 5220?
Yeah, until I finally got a job, you know. Hey, it came in handy. Unfortunately, while I was waiting to get a job was difficult, you know, because there were so many guys that came home and I let my insurance lapse, which was my fault, you know. So, but I do go to the VA hospital, so, which helps, and that's about all.
How do you think your experiences during service changed or altered your life in any way?
Well, I'll tell you,
added to it.
in a way, when you see what happens and we see what comes back, you say, I don't like war at all. I'd rather there be negotiations or something like that, you know, to prevent it. Because everybody suffers, everybody. And it's a horrible thing, that's all I could say. As I say, I was lucky that I was where I was, you know, even though, as I said, air raids, buzz bombs and whatnot, you know. And who knows, with saboteurs all over the place, they could have blown the train up too, you know, who knows?
Okay, all right, well,
That's
thank you
it.
very much for
Thank
your
you.
interview, sir.